Of course, those who are touched directly by loss of some of their family, they need some time. But if you go out in the streets and you talk to people who basically are not directly affected by this, they would say that, well, even with Armenians, at some point we will live together again as good neighbors. It's not something you have to spin, because it used to be the case during 7 decades of Soviet time. So I think that it takes, of course, time is the best cure. At the same time, they also need to see that this effort which we try to put together to bring peace, that it's not a failure. Here we can talk about this public diplomacy, we can talk what diplomats call track 2 diplomacy, track 1.5, these are kind of elements which accompany the main negotiation kind of format. But these are very important because starting from kids to elderly people, people of all walks of life, they need to learn to live in peace, even if it's about your nemesis, even if it's about, decades-long animosity. It's easier said than done, but we have experience, and we have also other parts of the world where Azerbaijani society and its fabric has always been a very diverse and very multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious. We are proud with this diversity, it's part of our DNA, and we don't imagine Azerbaijan being a mono-ethnic country. So that also, the fact that we have lived in this environment has brought up a completely different generation of people and, sort of people who are, enriching themselves by, living or being friends with some other people of other cultural or other roots. So that maybe makes a bit easier for us to get back to a situation when, at some point Armenians could be again living next to us. It is true that it may not happen tomorrow, but we should not just sit and wait until some time elapses so that we can get there. We need to work for that. Sometimes we are hearing some people from outside saying that, well, you need to prepare populations for peace. And that's, I think it's a wise advice. Unfortunately, there are no recipes, clear-cut recipes, so we have to invent that ourselves, but at the same time, the direction is the right one. Well, I think the root cause of that may be ignorance. The fact that people don't know enough about Azerbaijan. They base their judgment on some stereotypes or some misperceptions. And when you look into who is responsible for that, it's not entirely the responsibility of the others. It's also our, I think, weak point that we need to communicate better and more. At the same time, I believe that when you are in touch with people, when you try to communicate, to explain your part of the story, you see that more and more they are understanding and accepting that. So we don't think it's mission impossible to deal with this phenomenon. So it takes a lot of effort, daily work. It takes a lot of determination, perseverance, and confidence that you will arrive there. As diplomats, we are formed to always communicate, to deal with, and to try to, put across your position and so on. But when you deal with Europeans, you see that when they understand better, the situation, when they are given alternative points of view, they try to factor those in. And that changes, this perception may change, especially given the fact that when they learn that Azerbaijan, mentally we are also a kind of a mixture of different cultures, civilizations. We have always been geographically at the crossroads, so we are easy mixers. Well, at least we have ambition to do that. and when there is a will, there is a way, as they say. Of course, in terms of information war, it's still going on, because there are quite a few quarters throughout the world which find it difficult to digest this victory of Azerbaijan, and which are not ready to put up with the consequences of this for different reasons. At the same time, we believe that we need to win peace. After having won the war, Azerbaijan needs to win peace. Sometimes to win peace is even more difficult. And I think that one of the reasons why we should remain optimistic is the fact that this phenomenon of fatigue in both societies. If you look at the facts, and you have been following this region for a long time, when you want to understand what the Armenian society, ordinary Armenians, have gained during these almost 3 decades of occupying other countries' territory, I don't think the list is long. Most of the Armenian people haven't got anything, which they could be proud of, as saying that, well, because of the fact that Karabakh was under our control, we had this or that, the other thing. It's difficult for me to say how many, what is the percentage of their public opinion which still thinks along the same terms. But let me draw your attention to one particular episode. After the end of the Second Karabakh War, the Patriotic War, Pashinyan called snap parliamentary elections, and he wanted to renew his mandate. He wanted also to gauge the degree of support that he still has with this population, because he was defeated. And what was a big surprise, not only for us but to the outside world, was the fact that the party that he formed still won the election. So in normal circumstances, you would assume that the guy like him and his party would have been swept away from the political scene. It didn't happen. So we need to know why. And one of the reasons which comes to mind is that, well, the ordinary population, the electorate of Armenia, do not consider this issue to be on the top of their priority lists. What they do think is their priority is to live in peace in neighbors, so their kids are not sent to the forefront and are not getting killed, that the economy is doing better, their quality of life improves, and they can live a more predictable life when all of their neighbors are at least normal neighbors and not enemies. So that gives us certain reason to believe that now that this situation has been rectified, we are back in control of all our internationally recognized territory, that the majority of the Armenian people would abandon this myth of Greater Armenia, which inadvertently leaves them in a very dangerous territory. So that's why when we hear that more and more Armenian people are in social networks, in comments under different articles, they still, even though they are still in the stress, in the shock after what happened, they still, I think, are rather in favor of peace than a renewed war. I believe that there are several factors which are playing against us when we try to mobilize a more decent international support on demining. One of the stereotypes is that, well, this is an oil-producing country, they are a rich country, so you don't need any help. If you compare them with some other countries who are in much more difficult situations. Secondly, if you look at the recent history, you will see that there is a persistent decrease in the attention of the donor community to demining problem in general, let alone to Azerbaijan. Well, the perception is that we are a rich country. Because
you hear that from people?
Yeah, we hear that from people. Sometimes
wow.
When we reach out to some very rich countries or well-known donors in this field, what we receive as a reply, well, you're not a an X country in Africa. There is a counter movement which is shaped by this very harsh anti-Azerbaijani propaganda outside the country, because in in many countries of the world which are heavyweights in the international politics, you have a very well organized and very concentrated interest groups or lobbies. Of course, they are circling around the diaspora of Armenia, but it is one of the affecting factors, but not the only one. But I think that people should understand that it's not only about giving money to Azerbaijan so that it will clean up the territory. It's also a matter of human security. It's also a matter of human rights. Because if you refuse to assist a country facing such a huge challenge as the mine problem in Azerbaijan is, you are basically prolonging the period of wait for hundreds of thousands of people who have been uprooted from their homes, who have been IDPs for decades, and who now, knowing that their territories are no longer under foreign occupation, still are not able to get there, because unless we clean up those territories, unless we render them safe, we will not be able neither to create any new infrastructure, nor invite those people back to their homes. So we are prolonging the situation of forceful displacement by ignoring the expectations of these people. So, and when we try to explain that, we see that people are kind of awakening from this from this irrealistic assessment of why Azerbaijan needs this assistance. And again, I think that Azerbaijani government is not just asking for assistance. We are doing a lot on our own. If you look at the amount of resources which had been allocated in the last 3 years, this figure will tell you a lot. $200 million were earmarked from Azerbaijani budget to tackle the mine problem, while the whole amount of global assistance to us in the last 3 years was 12.5 million. So you may say that it's more than 10 times or even 15 times Azerbaijan has spent more. That means that we understand and realize our own ownership of this. But of course, if it is helped, what we will achieve, we will just speed up the moment when all of those who should be returning to their homes couldn't do that. We still are faced with double standards. We still are faced with realpolitik. We still are faced with internal politics interfering with any country's long-term national interests. I don't want to give concrete examples, but I have faced lots of situations when any important election is imminent in a country X with a substantial Armenian presence there. They would be less visible in terms of trying to help to promote peace. They would take pro-Armenian stance rather than objective stance because they need to do that to get certain votes. So that is a huge problem, and I think that we are still facing that, and this is not something which will disappear tomorrow. Well, let me start by saying that from the very start, in terms of, you mentioned the word possession. De facto possession, you're right, but in accordance with international law, this has always been part of Azerbaijan, and we were actually admitted to the United Nations with our internationally recognized borders. That is why when the Security Council in 1993 adopted those 4 famous resolutions, they reiterated Azerbaijan's sovereignty over Nagorno-Karabakh, and they basically had demanded complete unconditional withdrawal of Armenian forces. But it's true that it took us almost 28 years to get those resolutions implemented without any external assistance. But now, responding to your question, we see that after first of all, when we speak about international community, we have to distinguish whom we are talking about. There are some traditional players who are known for their close relations with Armenia. There are some European nations, United States itself, and so on. So it took some time for them to reconcile with the new situation on the ground. And I think time here is a curing factor. So basically, they had no reason to have a difficulty to reconcile with this, because all of their governments had in the past, on many occasions, expressed their support to Azerbaijan's territorial integrity. So now, when it really happened de facto, normally they wouldn't have had any problems. They shouldn't have any problems. But I would say that the global majority, they don't have any difficulty. I mean, they congratulated us with this. They were not very much optimistic about this outcome. But then when it happened, they had no reasons to put that into question, especially given the fact that we haven't occupied any inch of any other country's territory. We just, brought back to what was belonging to us from the very start. I would say that this is the term coined by President Aliyev, because actually he said that, he said that when this EU observation mission started to make a show out of their duties. But again, I think that that's another demonstration of not understanding correctly what the international facilitation should be about. Because when we talk about that, we should understand that it's about helping Armenia and Azerbaijan to narrow their differences, to bring them closer to eventual peace, to raise some confidence between the two countries. At the outset, they were denying the existence of maps whatsoever. Then they said, well, we have some maps, but we don't know whether they are good or not. Then they said, well, we actually got the good maps, but at the end of the day, 25% was the maximum of efficiency. A couple of days ago, they again provided us with 8 formulas, and Anama's recent statement was they are as useless as the previous ones, because basically they were indicating the placement of mines in some particular part in the mountain ridge, and the analysis of our experts showed that they are not workable. So yeah, it's about goodwill, you're right, that's the key word. That's about genuine intention to be part of the peace process. As they say, it takes 2 to tango. Unfortunately, we don't see Armenians ready for tango, and I don't know what are the long-term intentions of Armenia today. Well, they are speaking. The difference with pre-patriotic war situation is that at that time they were overconfident with their situation of occupying a nation. And they basically did not believe that situation on the ground may change drastically. So that's why they were basically imitating negotiation process at the time. What is happening today is that there is a new reality on the ground. They are no longer present in Azerbaijan's territory. At the same time, they understand that the best recipe for their security is to have peace with Azerbaijan. Now, the question is whether they are sincere in their pronouncements how they want to get that peace or not. So that is a difference with pre-war situation.